Greetings and welcome back for another Music Theory Bite. This video is about seventh chords. What are they, how to spell them, and what they do in tonal music. If that sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, then this is the video for you. Before watching this video, make sure you check out my videos on spelling triads and spelling intervals. You'll need to understand the content in those videos to make sense of what I'm talking about here today. So if you're ready, let's begin. One defining characteristic of tonal music is that chords are created by stacking thirds. The most basic type of chord in tonal music is the triad, which I talk about in my video on spelling triads. If we were to stack another third on top of a triad, we get what's called a seventh chord. And it's called that because of the interval of a seventh that occurs from the chord root to the newest pitch, the seventh built on top of it. Seventh chords are extensions of triads, and we create seventh chords for a couple of reasons. First, they give us some interesting resonances, some sounds that we don't have if we're only using triads. That little bit of dissonance makes the chord a little bit more interesting to hear. Second, adding a seventh, a dissonant tone, increases the chord's desire towards resolution. The interval of a seventh is a dissonance, which requires specific resolution. In this case, they almost always want to resolve down by step. The members of a seventh chord are the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh. The root is the lowest pitch when it's stacked in its most compact position. The third is immediately above that, a third above it. The fifth is a third above the third, and the seventh is a third above the fifth. Seventh chords have three characteristics. First, a chord root. It's the lowest pitch when the chord is stacked completely in thirds, and the pitch from which the chord gets its name, such as B flat major seventh. B flat would be the chord root. Quality is the specific arrangement of pitches and intervals in the chord. We'll talk about how to figure the quality in a few minutes. An inversion is an expression of which chord member, the root, third, fifth, or seventh, that happens to be the lowest pitch in the chord's presentation. Let's look at these characteristics individually. We've already talked about chord root, which is the lowest pitch when the chord is stacked completely in thirds. It's also the pitch from which the chord will get its name. When we talk about chord quality, there are 6 of them when we talk about seventh chords. And each seventh chord is going to have 2 names. One a complete name, and one a more common name. There are abbreviations that go with each of these names. You'll want to learn both because musicians go back and forth when referring to seventh chords. The complete name of a seventh chord consists of 2 quality identifiers. First, the identifier for the quality of the triad formed by the chord's root, third, and fifth. The second identifier is for the quality of the seventh, which occurs above the root. So proper names for a seventh chord could be major major, major minor, minor minor, minor major, diminished minor, and diminished diminished. We create seventh chords by stacking either a major third or a minor third above one of the tonal triads to form each individual seventh chord. Since we have 3 tonal triads, major, minor, and diminished, and we can stack a major third or a minor third above it, 2 qualities of thirds, 3 times 2 equals 6. There are 6 seventh chord qualities to learn about. The first seventh chord quality we're going to deal with, we'll start with a major triad on the bottom, and we'll put a major third on top of that. The interval formed between the root and the chord seventh is a major seventh. So the full name for this seventh chord is a major major seventh, which we would abbreviate by having capital M, and then we always have to put the number 7 or an appropriate inversional symbol next to it to show that we're dealing with seventh chords. The common name for this seventh chord is a major seventh chord, and we'll abbreviate that simply with a capital M, and the number 7. A major 7th chord, or major 7th chord, sounds like this. If we take the same major triad and we put a minor third on top of it instead, the interval formed between the root and the 7th is a minor 7th. So the full name of this 7th chord is a major minor 7th chord, which we would abbreviate capital M, small m, and then the inversional symbol, in this case a 7. The common name for this chord is a dominant 7th because this is the quality of 7th chord which shows up diatonically or without accidentals above the dominant or 5th scale degree in major. The common abbreviation for this is the Roman numeral 5, showing the function of a dominant, and the inversional symbol, in this case 7, so a 5-7. Our third 7th chord quality is minor major. We start with a minor triad, and we put a major third on top of that, creating a major 7th between the root and the 7th. This chord's a bit of an oddball in that it doesn't have a common name or a common abbreviation. The full abbreviation works for both. Little m, big M, 7. If we stay with that same minor triad, but we put a minor third above it instead, the 7th between the root and the 7th of the chord is a minor 7th. So the full name of this 7th chord is a minor minor 7th, abbreviated 2 little m's and the number 7. The common name for this 7th chord is a minor 7th chord, and the common abbreviation is simply a lowercase m and the number 7. And it sounds like this. If we were to start with a diminished triad and put a major third above it, we'll find that the quality of 7th, formed between the root and the 7th, is a minor 7th. So in this case, we're dealing with a diminished minor 7th chord. The common name for this is a half-diminished 7th chord. And the common abbreviation is a degree sign with a slash through it next to the number 7. And it sounds like this. If we start with that same diminished triad and we put a minor third above it, we end up with a diminished 7th chord. The interval between the root and the 7th is a diminished 7th. The common name for this chord is a fully diminished 7th chord, and its a common abbreviation is a degree sign with the number 7 next to it. You need to put the number 7 next to it to distinguish it from a diminished triad, which also uses the degree sign. Each of these 7th chord qualities shows up diatonically, or without the use of accidentals, in the major-minor tonal system, except for one. Major 7th chords show up as the tonic and subdominant 7th chords in major, and as the mediant and submediant 7th chords in minor. Dominant 7th chords show up as the dominant 7th chord in major, and the subtonic 7th chord in minor, and they also show up as the dominant 7th chord in minor when we raise the leading tone. Minor 7th chords show up as the supertonic 7th, mediant 7th, and submediant 7th in major, and as the tonic and subdominant 7th in minor. Half-diminished 7th chords show up as the leading tone 7th chord in major, and the supertonic 7th chord in minor. Fully diminished 7th chords show up in only one place in the entire major-minor tonal system, and that's as the leading tone 7th chord in minor. Notice that the minor-major 7th chord does not show up in the major-minor tonal system without the use of accidentals. Because of that, we don't include it in the list of what we call the tonal 7th chords. the 5 tonal 7th chords are major 7th, dominant 7th, minor 7th, half-diminished 7th, and fully diminished 7th. So if you're going to spell a 7th chord, you need to memorize the interval content or triad quality and quality of 3rd or 7th placed on top of it for each of the 7th chord qualities. Or you can memorize each 7th chord's place in the tonal system, treat the root of that chord as a particular scale degree, find tonic, and then apply the correct key signature. So for example, if I needed to spell a G major 7th chord, a major 7th chord consists of a major triad with a major 3rd put on top of it, or we can think of a major triad with a major 7th from the root placed on top of it. A major triad built on G gets me G, B, and D, and then a major 7th above the root is an F sharp, or I could also think of it as a major 3rd above the chord 5th. A major 3rd above D is also an F sharp. So my 4 pitches would be G, B, D, and F sharp. If I were to use the second method, the scale degree method for spelling this, I know major 7th chords appear as the tonic 7th chord in the major mode. So I can take the chord root, G, and take that as the name of the key, G major, which has 1 sharp, an F sharp. I spell my 4 notes, and then I put the key signature for G major on the appropriate pitches. In this case, I have an F, which needs to be adjusted to an F sharp. If I wanted to spell an A minor 7th chord, I know that a minor 7th chord consists of a minor triad with a minor 3rd placed on top of it, or I could think of it as a minor triad and a minor 7th above the chord root. An A minor triad consists of the pitches A, C, and E. A minor 3rd above E is a G. And notice how G is also a minor 7th above A. So the pitches for an A minor 7th chord would be A, C, E, and G. Using the scale degree method, minor 7th chords show up as the supertonic triad in a major key. So I know that A would be the supertonic or second scale degree in the key of G major. G major has 1 sharp, which is an F sharp, and since I don't have any Fs in this chord, I don't need to adjust any pitches. If I were to spell an F sharp half-diminished 7th chord, I start by spelling a diminished triad, F sharp, A, C, and then I'll write a major 3rd above the 5th of that. C to E is a major 3rd, or a minor 7th above my chord root. F sharp to E is a minor 7th. Using the scale degree method, half-diminished 7th chords show up as the leading tone triad in a key. In this case, we're still in G major. So the key signature for G major is 1 sharp, which is F sharp, which is already accounted for because of the chord root. I don't need to adjust any other pitches. Let's make it a little bit more complicated. If I needed to spell a D fully diminished 7th chord, I start by writing a diminished triad, D, F, A flat, and I can either put a minor 3rd above A flat, which would be a C flat, or I can write a diminished 7th above a D, which would also be a C flat. Fully diminished 7th chords show up as the leading tone triad in a minor key. So if I think of D as the leading tone in the key of E flat minor, which has 6 flats, I know that I'm going to have to adjust any B's, E's, A's, D's, G's, or C's that I see. Now I said that I needed to adjust D's, but since that's the chord root, and since the leading tone requires an accidental that raises the pitch in minor, I don't need to adjust the root of this chord. I will end up with D, F, A flat, and C flat. Now let's talk about chordal inversions. As with triads, inversional symbols are a shorthand that indicates the intervals above a bass note. The system is derived from a practice common in the Baroque era from around 1600 to 1750. We can use this system to indicate the inversion of a seventh chord. So if we take the full inversional symbol for a root position seventh chord, we'll notice that we have a third above our chord root, a fifth above our chord root, and a seventh above our chord root. So the full figured bass symbol for a root position seventh chord is 7, 5, 3. Musicians shorthanded this. They could always assume a fifth and a third if there was no other indication. So we can create a shorthand for a root position seventh chord, which is simply the number 7. In first inversion, you'll notice we have a third above our bass note, a fifth above it, and a sixth above it. Once again, since we could always assume that thirds would be there without any indication, we can simply remove that to get the shorthand symbol for a first inversion seventh chord. So whenever you see the numbers 6, 5, that indicates a first inversion seventh chord. Placing a seventh chord in second inversion, you'll see that we have above our bass a third, a fourth, and a sixth. This one's a little bit different. Instead of removing the 3, which would leave us just the number 6, 4, which we already use for second inversion triads, we remove the number 6 instead. So the inversional symbol for a second inversion seventh chord is 4, 3. Likewise, with third inversion, we have a second above the bass, a fourth above the bass, and a sixth above the bass. Again, as we did with the second inversion, we'll remove the 6. So if you see the numbers 4, 2, that's the indication for a third inversion seventh chord. Remember that inversional symbols tell you only which chord member is in the bass, or the lowest note of the texture. They don't tell you anything about the distribution of the remaining chord tones. So for example, in the seventh chords we already spelled, G major 7 means that the root of the chord, G, should be the lowest pitch, and no matter how I voice the other pitches, all of these chords are still going to be G major 7th chords. If I take my A minor 7th chord and put it in first inversion, it is now A minor 6, 5, which means the third of the chord, or C, will be in the bass. And again, no matter how I distribute the other voices of the chord, as long as C is the lowest pitch, it is in first inversion. If I take my F sharp half-diminished 7th chord and put it in second inversion, it's an F sharp half-diminished 4-3, the fifth of the chord, or C, will be the bass pitch, no matter how I distribute the other voices. And finally, a D fully diminished 7th chord in third inversion, a D fully diminished 4-2, will have the C flat, the chord 7th, as the lowest pitch, no matter how I arrange all of the remaining pitches. Inversion only refers to which chord member is the bass pitch or lowest pitch of the chord. When recognizing 7th chords, the easiest way to do this is to arrange the chord in thirds. So you start by writing out all the letter names that go into the chord from low to high alphabetically. Once you've done that, check and see if you have thirds between all of the pitches. In this case, we don't. So if I take my first pitch and move it to the end, I can then check again and see if I have all thirds. In this case, I do. There's a shortcut for doing this. You'll notice that when I first started, I didn't have all thirds. I had a second in my spelling of this chord. The chord root is always going to be the higher letter name where that second occurs. After I figure out which chord tone is the root, Then I check the quality of the triad. In this case, it's a minor triad. And then I check the quality of the chord seventh. In this case, it's a minor seventh. So I have a minor minor seventh chord, or I'll use the common name, a minor seventh chord, built on D. To determine the inversion, I look back at the original chord, figure out which chord member is the lowest pitch. In this case, it's an F. That is the chord third, and the inversional symbol for a first inversion seventh chord is 6-5. So I have a D minor 6-5 chord. I'll deal with the specifics of part writing seventh chords in later videos. One thing to remember now, though, which will help tremendously when you start to part write these things, is a very simple sentence. Memorize this. All good chord sevenths must resolve down by step. Remember that, and part writing becomes a lot easier. So let's summarize. There are 5 different tonal seventh chord qualities. Major major, its common name is major seventh. Major minor, or dominant seventh. Minor minor, or minor seventh. Diminished minor, or half-diminished seventh. And diminished diminished, or fully diminished seventh. The names are derived from the quality of the triad, and then the quality of the seventh above the root. Although we create seventh chords by putting a tonal triad and then placing either a major third or a minor third above it. Seventh chord inversions use figured bass symbols. 7 for root position, 6-5 for first inversion, 4-3 for second inversion, and 4-2 for third inversion. Remember that the inversion refers only to which chord member is in the bass. Root position has the root in the bass, first inversion has the third in the bass, second inversion has the fifth in the bass, and third inversion has the seventh in the bass. Well, that does it for this video. That's the basics of how to spell and recognize the tonal seventh chords. If you found it helpful, please share comments below, and as always, subscribe to find out about the latest music theory bites as they become available. Until next time.